This is Abby and the Mayor. What you're going to get is a series of tiles that each player is going to get one tile of. This is essentially a fill-a-hole. We'll talk about that in a minute. You have a couple of regular tiles, and each of the unique tiles here, you're going to have the road that goes through the city. Does not split the city, but the road splits the farms in two. You have a bridge that goes over a city, so you're connecting two cities across. And you have the well, which it is just a continuation. It doesn't stop the road. You also get the mayor meeple. You get a barn, and you get a wagon. Now what we're going to show you here is that is the mega meeple from Inns and Cathedrals, and that is the regular meeple from Carcassonne. So you can see the difference. So let's say you have this unique setup here where you have a little piece of the city over here and you have a piece of the city over here. You have 4 pennants in there and you want to lock down this city so that you own it. Well, that's where the mayor comes in. You drop that mayor in a city. The mayor has to go into a city. He can't go on roads and fields and things. There's 4 pennants there. That mayor is now worth 4 meeples. Okay, regarding the barn now, you have this setup where there's a 4 points essentially on 4 fields join in the middle. You have a farmer there. You would turn around and you would place your barn right in the middle on the 4 points. You would immediately score that farm. So any completed cities would be scored at this point, and the meeple comes home. At the end of the game, this barn scores 4 points for every city it touches. So if each of these becomes a city, that would be 4 cities, which would be 4 times 4, 16. So let's talk about the wagon. The way the wagon works is it's essentially a traveling meeple. So I place my tile, and I put my wagon on the road. Turn comes around, and I place my next tile. I've now completed this road. So I score the road as I would, and the wagon can move. And it moves over to the city. On my next turn, I might place that tile. I've now completed the city. I score it as I would because it's a meeple. And then it travels again. It goes over here to this city. My next turn, I can place this tile. I've now completed that city. I score that city as because it's a meeple. And because there's nowhere else to go, it comes off the board. The last thing we're going to talk about is the Abbey tile. Now this tile starts out in your hand at the beginning of the game, and you can use it whenever you like. So let's say you have this set up. And this is kind of common with Carcassonne, where you get a hole and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for this tile to come out and it never comes out. Well, that's what this is for. So you need the 4 tiles to surround it, and on your turn you drop that in. And now you've filled the hole. It's kind of a wild card and you can play on it. One other thing about this tile here is it acts as a cloister. So what you would do is you would place a monk on that cloister, no matter where it's at. Alright, this is a series of expansions that make up the last expansion of the big box. What you're going to get in here is the River 2, the Cult and the Heretic, and the Count of Carcassonne. And you get a Count meeple with that. Plus there's some random tiles up here as well. Alright, the first piece we're going to talk about here is the Cult and the Heretic. So the Cult is a tile that looks like this and works just like a cloister. However, when you put your meeple on it, it is not a monk, it's a heretic. And you build around it with the 9 tiles and you score on it. The chief rule here is that you can't have more than 1 cloister adjacent to this cult and the heretic. So, if that tile comes into play, you have a cloister on it. You cannot put another cloister around it, just like so. When this happens, a challenge is on the table. So let's back it up. This is my play here. I have my heretic. I have my cult tile. The next player comes along. He's the yellow player. Places a cloister and places a monk. Now we have a challenge on the table. Whoever fills the 9 spaces first wins the challenge. If I win on the red, this monk goes away and scores nothing. Vice versa, if the monk wins, the heretic goes away and I score nothing. All right, this is a sample of what the river might look like. Essentially, each player picks tiles and they start laying them down in some kind of order, and this is the center of the board, and everything is built off of it. So you have a spring at one end, and you have the pool at the other end, and you have a fork in the road. Now, what I want to point out on here is if you are playing with the other expansions, there's some things in here that are part of that. So for example, you have an inn for if you're playing the inn in Cathedrals. You have the pigs if you're playing Traders and Builders. And down here is a volcano. So if you're playing with the Princess and Dragon, automatically the dragon will start on the board. And this can be changed up, but the rule is you can never U-back on yourself. So the river can never come down and then spin back around. It has to continue on. So the count starts with a series of tiles that make up the city of Carcassonne. Now these are going to replace the starting tile that comes with Carcassonne. So essentially you have different areas of this city. You have the castle, you have a market, you have the blacksmith, and you have a cathedral. The count starts off at the castle. Now, the city of Carcassonne is essentially a holding pen that allows you to place meeples that will be used later. So when you place a tile and your opponent scores and you do not score, you get to place a meeple inside of Carcassonne. So for example, let's say that happened and I want to place somebody on the blacksmith. When I do that, I then can also move the count. Let's say I want to put him on the cathedral. Now, the benefit of the different areas is such. The castle, meeples on the castle go to completed cities. If the meeple is on a market, it goes to a farm. If it's on the blacksmith, he's going to go to a road. And the cathedral is going to go to a cloister. So the strategy here is if you've got meeples on your blacksmith there and somebody comes along and hits you with the count, you no longer can move to a road that's completed that you're going to get points on. So if they turn around and let's say they've got something on the cathedral and you turn around and you're going to place another meeple here, you'd want to move the count to where they are so that they can't pull that meeple out of the city. The last two things that we're going to talk about as part of the box here is the King and the Robber Baron. These two tiles here. If you've ever played Settlers of Catan, you're going to be familiar with what these tiles do. Essentially, the King is going to be at the end of the game, whoever has the largest city gets that tile. And they're going to get 1 point for every city that they have extra. The Robber Baron is the equivalent of the longest road. So whoever has the longest road is going to get the Robber Baron tile, and then they're going to get 1 point for every road that's completed. Okay, now before we close out this video, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. Remember we said there's 5 expansions plus Carcassonne. Carcassonne is typically a 40-minute game, an hour game. Each of these expansions is going to add 20 minutes to your game time. They all have a lot of tiles, so that adds more tiles to the game, plus more stuff to do. So, if you're looking to play a full-bore, big box game, I would say you're looking at about a 2.5 hour game. So be aware of that as you start thinking about adding the different parts and pieces. If you are considering buying Carcassonne by itself without the expansions, this box is not for you. It's overwhelming, there's a lot here, there's a lot of rules, and a lot of different expansions. Go buy Carcassonne and have a good time with it. It's a good game by itself. However, if you're thinking about buying Carcassonne and any of the combination of expansions, I would say just spend the money and buy the big box. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to buy Carcassonne and you're going to buy Princess and the Dragon or Inns and Cathedrals or Traders and Builders, and you're going to enjoy it. You're then going to turn around and you're going to go, you know what? I want to add Inns and Cathedrals to my Princess and Dragon, or what have you, whatever that combination is. And all of a sudden you're going to end up buying all of these expansions. Well, this box is cheaper than buying the core game and all the expansions. Plus, if you're going to buy it online, you're going to be shipping every one of these games to yourself. You're better off with the big box. So from a financial standpoint, this game is a deal.